Today, we're diving into one of the most foundational stories out there, from Genesis chapter 3. It's a story that tackles a huge question, one that people have wrestled with forever. How does a perfect world, a place of total innocence, just break?
So yeah, that's the big question for us today. And the answer the story gives isn't some massive cosmic war or a natural disaster. No, it's something a lot quieter, a lot more personal. It all kicks off with a conversation, a single choice, and a piece of fruit.
All right, so let's meet the antagonist of this story, the serpent. It's described as being more crafty and subtle than any other animal, and its weapon of choice? Not brute force, but some seriously clever psychological manipulation.
And there it is. The whole thing starts not with an order or a blatant lie, but with a question. Did God really say? It sounds so innocent, right? But what it's really designed to do is plant that first tiny seed of doubt, to make the woman stop and think and maybe question if God's command was really as good or as clear as she thought.
So once that seed of doubt is planted, the serpent moves to phase 2, a direct contradiction. This is bold. It's a flat-out denial of what God had said would happen. It's basically the serpent whispering, God isn't telling you the whole story.
You can really see the three-step strategy here, and man, is it effective. First, it makes you doubt what you were told. Second, it tells you there are no consequences for breaking the rule. And third, it plants a brand new desire by promising you'll gain power and wisdom, that you'll be like a god. It's just a masterclass in dismantling trust.
Okay, so with the foundation of trust totally eroded, the spotlight shifts. The serpent has done its job. Now everything hangs on the woman, the tree, and the decision she's about to make. And you can see why the temptation was just so powerful. It appealed to her on every single level. It was good for food. That covers the physical need. It was pleasing to the eye. That's the aesthetic appeal. But the real clincher was the promise of gaining wisdom. In that moment, that powerful desire just completely won out over obedience.
The way this story describes the action is almost chillingly simple. She took, she ate, she gave. And here's a really important detail. The text makes a point of saying her husband was right there with her. So this wasn't some secret act. It was a shared decision, a quiet little moment that would send shockwaves through all of human history. Now, you might expect a bolt of lightning or the ground to shake, but the change wasn't external, at least not at first. The very first consequence was internal. It was a massive, immediate shift inside their own heads and hearts.
And that transformation was instant and profound. Just look at the contrast here. The before was all about innocence, joy, being completely open. The after? Well, that's defined by shame, fear, and a new instinct to hide. Their eyes were opened, sure, but not to some amazing wisdom. They were opened to their own guilt and vulnerability.
This is actually the very first time the word afraid even appears in the Bible. Think about that. Their relationship with God is just fractured in an instant. The sound of him approaching, which used to bring joy, now brings terror. Their first gut reaction is to cover up and hide. So when God confronts them, the man doesn't take responsibility. He immediately starts deflecting. And notice the subtle jab. It's not just aimed at the woman, but kind of at God too. The woman you gave me. The cycle of blame had officially begun.
And the woman just follows his lead. She points the finger right back at the serpent. See the pattern? No one is willing to own the choice they made. In a heartbeat, innocence is gone, and in its place are fear and blame.
So, after the blame game is over, the story lays out the formal consequences. And these aren't just random punishments. They're almost like a description of the new operating system for the world. A world where our relationships with God, with each other, and with nature itself are now broken. This table lays it all out pretty clearly. The consequences hit everyone involved and introduce conflict into every part of life. The serpent is humbled and now at war with humanity. For the woman, childbirth becomes painful, and a new tension enters relationships. And for the man, the very ground he needs to work will now fight back, turning what was once a joy into a hard struggle. And then comes the ultimate consequence. The serpent had promised, "You will not die." But God's original warning turned out to be true. Mortality enters the picture. And this isn't just about physical death. The text implies it's also a spiritual separation from the very source of life. But just when the story feels like it's all about punishment and judgment, it takes a really unexpected turn. Woven into all these harsh new realities are these surprising moments of mercy, which really complicates things.
I mean, think about this for a second. Their own attempt to cover their shame was, well, it was flimsy. Fig leaves would just wither and fall apart. But then God steps in and gives them something better, something durable. This act, which would have required the death of an animal, is seen by many as the very first sacrifice, a symbol of God himself providing a covering, an act of care even when they just disobeyed him.
Even being kicked out of the garden can be seen as a strange act of mercy. Why? Well, what if they had eaten from the tree of life in their new broken state? They would have been locked into that suffering, shame, and separation for eternity. So the exile, as awful as it was, actually prevented an endless cycle of brokenness.
And finally, tucked away inside the curse on the serpent is this mysterious promise. It talks about a future conflict. The serpent will get a strike in, a wound to the heel, but the woman's descendant will deliver a final, crushing blow to the head. This is the very first glimmer of hope, a hint that the fall might not be the end of the story. So we're left with this incredible tension. A world that's broken by deception and choice, a world filled with hardship, but also a world that, from the very beginning of its brokenness, holds a tiny promise of redemption. It's a story about a fall, but maybe, just maybe, it also contains the very first clue of a way back up.